All right, how's everyone doing? I am Rich CELENZA. Thanks for checking out the Rich CELENZA show. So I'm going to call this one "Play It Back," and it may sound kind of crazy, but if you know anything about me, I'm always trying and experimenting with different things. As far as I would say traveling, or trying different workouts, or watching different things and studying different things and creating different things, and is kind of experimental as I am always somebody too that kind of goes back and plays it back to, does the things I should say that I love to do, which I call it playing it back. And it's as much as I believe that I evolved over the last X amount of years. What a lot of people don't really know about me is I ended up, I don't know, 6-7 years ago, moving back to where I was like 19, 20 years old in this certain area of Orlando, Florida that I like. And, one of the reasons I moved there was because of the location, but I also did something where some of my best times of my life were around, 19, 20, 21, 22 years old. My friends and all the things that I was doing back then. And I didn't want to go back and live like I'm saying I'm going to go back and live in my past by any means, because I'm all about, moving forward, I think, like a lot of us, but I still do know I love a lot of things about my past that I didn't want to let go. And I think a lot of people forget how much they do love their past, or things that they love doing in their past. Especially guys, I think, I could speak for a lot of guys I know that, end up getting, they're a certain way through high school, then college, then they get married, they transform into something else, which is understandable. They're a dad, they move to different communities. Then they become middle-aged or even older, and then they kind of conform into something else, and they kind of, forget really what a lot of things that they love doing, I guess you could say. Or I've been able to balance both pretty well. And back to moving back to where I lived a long time ago, I even got a similar car that I had. So I used to have in my 19 or 20, 21, I had two cars I love, which I want to go back and get one, but one was a Grand National, which I'm thinking about getting. And then the other one was a Mercedes 450 SL convertible. And when I moved back to Florida from California, I always loved this 2004 style Mercedes, and I caught one. It's like a vintage. It's not vintage. It's 17, 18 years old now, but I loved it. A silver one. It kind of looked like my favorite car. James Dean, the Porsche, the little bastard, which I was thinking of getting something not that vintage. That's a classic. That's worth tons of money. But I was thinking of getting a small Porsche, but only had 2 seats. This one had 4. So I went and got a kind of a Mercedes, and moved right down the street from where I used to live. And I loved living there. I loved working out there. I loved, like I said, the location. I just loved living near Windermere, but I also had access to downtown, if you know anything about Orlando. I also have access to Disney. I'm right behind Universal. And I also started doing a lot of things. I would go to now I still go to the kind of the same malls, and I see my daughters now. They're in their almost mid-20s now, but I've kind of I'm doing things with them at their age in the location that I did it, and I just like, again, playing it back. And especially when I was traveling for so long and being in all these different places all over North America, and then we went to Italy or Europe as well, and I was always coming back to a place that I felt youthful. And I found, I'll just say that when I was getting older, I actually should say when I was living in California with my cousin, with him in Carlsbad, it was amazing. And I loved being around all these healthy people. And I felt very youthful. And when I was coming back to Florida, I said, we're throwing all these different, things around, even with my girlfriend where to live, because she needed to be close to like a bunch of different cities and towns, because she traveled throughout Florida. And I said, I'm not saying I want to start over again, but I just, every time I left to go do something or travel, when I came back, it was almost like starting over. But where I was starting over was where I kind of started, where I began. And I really like that, and I still like that. And it's hard for me to move out of this area. The only other area I'd really like to live in would be a Windermere area, which is extremely expensive, which is wonderful. I mean, I wouldn't mind doing that. But what's interesting is, like, there's a big difference between Metro West and obviously Windermere expense, lifestyle. And I spend a majority of my time in Windermere, which is kind of funny. For the most part, my gym's there. We go to, that's even where it's right next to Lake Buena Vista where Disney is. And it's a big part of Metro, right next to me. But if you're somebody who's kind of bogged down, and I don't care if you've been divorced or you're married and maybe you're an empty nester and all these things, sometimes just for a small amount of time, you can either move to where you kind of loved it, one of your favorite places, or just hang out, kind of go back and just do a lot of things that you love to do. I know on Facebook and Instagram, it was kind of funny that the people that really knew me back in Florida in the old days, they would see what I was doing, and they were confused. They'd always see me traveling. They're like, Rich, man, you're never home, blah, blah. You're all over the place. And then they'd be like, wait a minute, and then I'd get even personal messages or a text if I knew them, if they were a friend. They're like, wow, nothing's really ever changed with you. You live right down the street from where you live. You're always at like your favorite Italian restaurants, your favorite old school coffee houses. You're still at Universal Studios. You still go to Disney, and you still go to that mall. And you still, like, they would see my car maybe. And one time they made a joke. It said, God, your life is basically still based around an Italian restaurant. What did she say? There's a couple of them said, a bunch of them. Italian restaurant, cruising around in a convertible, going to the gym and going to the mall. She says, when you're home. And I said, yeah, that kind of sums me up. It kind of does. And, again, if you're somebody who's kind of stuck or you fall in a rut, I just thought I would do a podcast on this because I think a lot of times, and I think I touched upon this one time on a podcast or a video, is we let all the things go that we used to love to do. Or I'm not saying become ashamed of them, or like if we go back and do something that we did before, you could frown upon it. It would be like, I went back and rented an apartment almost identical to the one I lived in. And I probably would have moved back to my original apartment that I moved in my late teens and 20s, but they didn't have any available. But I found another one that was actually even better with a better view. And then when it was time to move again, we decided to move. I moved right next to the complex that I was in, which was even a better view. But I still, I feel at home, and I think, I'm from Chicago originally, and a lot of my family members, where I grew up, it was mainly, I spent a lot of time in our families from Chicago, right next to Cicero area. It's called the Island, and then I was in LaGrange in Melrose Park. For the most part, everybody's left there, except one of my closest friends who lives in LaGrange Park, who I still love to go there. I feel like I'm at home, but it's only for short amount of time. And it's definitely changed. Actually, it's wonderful, LaGrange. It's gorgeous. It looks a lot different. But as far as my family goes in Chicago, no one really, lives in those areas anymore. So when I go home, it's kind of home, but unless I'm going to certain restaurants, my favorite places or pizzerias and stuff, that feels home. But for the most part, everybody's kind of left. But when it comes to now feeling at home in Florida, that's kind of home as far as that home goes. So anyways, I just thought I would do a podcast on this, but go visit your past. I'm telling you, go back to maybe some other, even if you've, a lot of times too, going back, and if you know anything about me, I like hanging out, and I realize this, and I will sum it up with this, that, I was partially raised by my immigrant grandparents, and my grandfather from Italy, from Naples, was like a father to me. And then I realized when I moved to Florida, I started hanging out with Italians that were from Italy. One Sicilian, one from Naples, a couple of Sicilians, and a lot of my friends from New York, family members, a lot of them. Our ancestry goes back to Italy. And again, that I didn't really think about this, and I'm still friends with all of them, and they own Italian restaurants, and I love spending time with them. And when I'm listening to them, I feel like I'm kind of listening to my grandfather. If you're somebody, too, who maybe, was raised by immigrants or certain people and you kind of got away from it, go back and visit it. Now, I'm not telling you to go out and make friends with, just because they're foreigners or whatever the case may be, but just being around people, and that's one of the reasons why when I travel, like I usually go and hang out in Italian neighborhoods, even though I don't know anybody for the most part, Little Italy's or whatever. I don't know a soul in most of these places. But I go there and I kind of feel at home because I feel like my grandparents are with me. And maybe that's another component in your life, because I think things have changed and evolved, especially over the last 20 years, that, it's maybe something missing in your life is something that you really love doing in your past and you never realized it again. But it's not just about the environment as far as, say, restaurants and things. It's the people. And me getting back around a lot of people, even though I may not know them, they're not my family, but I'm going to their establishments, or just, I don't care if I'm at the park playing chess with someone I don't know in New York, or doing something with people that I just feel like I'm just very comfortable around. You may consider it as well, depending on your nationality or whatever you like, is what I should say as well. So again, if you like chess, maybe you're in a chess club, but maybe going somewhere and playing it with people that you've never thought about playing before. So I'm going to wrap it up there. If you want to, this is really all I'm going to be doing, I think, for a while, is my podcast. I'm kind of burnt out on my YouTube channel, and I just like this a lot better, so I'm going to just be doing this. So you want to know more about me, you could just check me out, richcelenza.com. All right, take care.